Hello, I'm Carmen Dominguez, and this is SEO in 2024 Additional Insights.
Carmen, what's your additional insight for SEO in 2024?
So I would say my additional insight will be to focus more in CTR and focus less in rankings, and I will explain why is that the case.
Okay, so why is CTR so important?
I think CTR has always been very important because actually wherever your ranking is will have an impact in CTR. The reason why I think it's more important now that it has been in previous years is because obviously Google is getting more crowded, right? The SERPs are getting more crowded. And ranking number one, it doesn't necessarily mean having the highest CTR anymore. So for you to rank number one, number two, number three, it doesn't even mean that you're going to get a click because you get all these snippets. You get the search engine so fast. You get as well now SGE, right? That is going to make the SERPs go down. So if you always focus on, okay, my keyword is ranking number one, and you don't check the CTR, you won't be able to spot the problem, right? So being able to monitor that, at least for the keyword groupings, should be something that you do not only now, but from now on, in my opinion. I can't even get into an experiment I did recently about
Sure. Can I just get into that in 1 second, actually? Because, I mean, what you were saying there intrigued me. You were talking about monitoring CTR by keyword grouping. So you monitor CTR according to keyword group and I guess match that keyword group to a URL and then look at the CTR for that URL. Is that what you do?
Exactly. I tend to group them not only for URLs, but for clusters, right? So I'm thinking of a SaaS client. I get my clusters on, let's say they do e-learning. So I get my clusters on onboarding topics. And then from onboarding, I tag the type of content that there is, and then the rankings that they rank for. Because Google is getting smarter and smarter, well, kind of, because there is also the topic of the spam. But because Google is starting to show things beyond just the keyword that you type, but more of the intent and the history of your search, you can no longer assume that your one URL talking about onboarding is the one that is going to be popping up all the time. Depending on the intent and the search history, it might be your blog, right? But if you monitor the CTR of all this group of keywords that you have, and as well as the URL, you can actually check if the intent behind and how people search. And you can also monitor how crowded the SERPs are. The SERPs won't be as crowded depending on where the user is coming from, in my opinion, and depending again of the history of the user. I think they are no longer one SERP per keyword. There will be SERPs per user, and that makes keyword ranking way more difficult and less useless to track when you're trying to check if your strategy is actually working.
Okay, so I certainly understand that you can get SERPs per user and different users will experience, I guess, your pages in different contexts depending on what they're wanting to do. And that will obviously alter the CTR. So how do you know what's altering the CTR, how to maximize the CPR, and I guess how to optimize for the optimum intent that gives you the maximum CTR?
So actually, for me, all this year has been a proper, no, it looks like 2024 has been forever, it's in April, but it's been a lot of having to go back to the basics of SEO to try to understand how to properly get to the user, right? It's been a lot of me checking constantly the SERPs, checking constantly that my content is actually what the users are looking for and is giving something to the users that they cannot find anywhere. So optimizing for CTR, aside of obviously the titles, which is really difficult because Google changed them, not 90% of the time, but I think the data was 73% of the time Google changes the meta title. So you can no longer optimize for meta titles. What you need to know is know your SERP by heart. Check out your SERP. Obviously, always try to optimize it anyway in case Google doesn't change it. But the most important bit is check out your SERP. What are users checking on the SERP? And you need to constantly check because it's changing so fast. It's no longer you check once a year. You need to be constantly checking every every month or every 2 months to see how the searches are. What is it coming across? Is it video? If the new thing that is video, do you need to make sure that you have a video content in there? Is your content good enough? Are you actually providing enough from the users? Are the users clicking on my site, on my page? Can I get my users to click to the page from different platforms? Getting the basic is the first thing that you need to do, making sure that your content is good for the user, not for the SERP, good for the user, is properly technically sound. So does it have a schema? Does it have my authors? Does it have everything that you need? And then from there, is it competing well enough with the rest of the content? I think we have get so used to just getting to rankings and doing things in the background to make sure that we get to rankings that we have forgotten the basics, which is convincing the user to read my content throughout and staying in my page and engaging with my content. I know that I just said a lot of words and I didn't give a proper action to do, but I think the action is understand your competitors very well in terms of what they're doing and make sure that you convince your users to stay with you with proper convincing facts, with proper content, and with a page that is really sound, which is what we should have always done as an SEO, right? We should always have focus on the user and not in Google, because at the end of the day, it's the clicks that is going to make us go ranking high.
Thank you for the actions as well. And that was certainly useful, I'm sure. And I'm conscious that you also mentioned that you'd like to share an example earlier on, and I'll just get back to that in 1 second. But I was drawn by one stats that you shared. You said Google changed 73% of titles. So if that's the case, then why not just use AI to automatically generate titles from your content if Google are going to change it most of the time?
Well, if you do it in a way that AI is smart enough and the content is being produced in a way that is not dodgy, I'm not against using AI to actually produce your titles. In the end of the day, if Google are going to be changing your titles, and normally they change the titles using the H1, right? Or H2s. If your H1s and your H2s are good enough, it doesn't matter if they change the titles, right? Or if you create it with AI, as long as it's done properly. The importance, in my opinion, is that it doesn't look dodgy, it doesn't look like it's not natural. It doesn't look like the user is going to react saying, what is this? So if AI is working for you to achieve that objective, AI is good. The important bit in the end is that the user is enjoying it and it doesn't look spammy, I think.
Do you try and split test different styles of titles to optimize CTR?
It's quite common, but again, I come with this problem that Google very often changes my titles. That's why I said that it's a bit of a nightmare. I think it has been doing it less recently, probably because they are busy doing all the things. But I remember many A/B tests that we have done that didn't work out just because Google was changing our titles. And actually, the worst part is that you won't necessarily see it, because if I'm checking myself, and I see my title and I have a colleague checking and I has a different title. So it's really difficult to actually get proper results from the meta titles in particular. Particularly if your page is well known. So if you use one page that actually gets a lot of clicks in general, they will change it very often to see if they get more clicks.
That's a great point. I mean, if you're doing a split test on that, don't assume that Google are going to be showing the same page title all the time. And it could actually be changing one version of the title more often, and that could have a tremendous influence on the result and obviously just skew everything that you're trying to test.
I mean, frankly, in many cases, the things that they have changed, again, if you have optimized your H1 and your title in a way that is similar, the title won't change that much. The problem is when the title and the H1 don't match, which then it is a big issue, because as from the SEO perspective, they should never mismatch, right? Because your H1 is almost saying the same thing as the title, but it's very often that for SEOs, they change it to try to get to rank for more keywords, or Google doesn't necessarily always get the H1. Sometimes it also gets from paragraphs, which doesn't help really. But again, this thing of changing the titles, I haven't seen it so far this year as I saw it last year, for example. This year I've seen lots of other weird stuff, like getting in the UK or in Spain, for example. Sometimes I get translated articles from the BBC, even if I'm searching in Spanish in Spain, rather than getting Spanish results, which I think is a product of MAM. But it's a it's having a big impact, for example, for international SEO, because then it makes, or even UK SERPs, it makes the SERPs even more crowded than what they used to be before. So these are more of the tests I'm seeing this year, rather than the things I'm seeing in the SERPs, rather than changing of the titles. But obviously, it does have an impact in CTR again, because if you're getting way more competition now than you were having before, so there are more factors that you need to consider as well.
So what's this example that you wanted to share?
So I wanted to, I've been doing two separate experiments, one over time and another one only on the last year. The first one was using just one URL, checking at the rankings that have been constant, but checking at the CTR to see how it had changed. So in the last 3 years, the CTR of this blog post has changed and reduced constantly, year after year, update after update, even though ranking is always number one. So number one, number two, kind of over there, but it has gone down constantly, which actually then prompt me to check all the rankings for all the pages for another client of mine. And that is when I realized that the correlation between ranking position one was very low versus getting all the clicks and all the traffic. In fact, I even got a graph where I could that 80% of the clicks were coming from pages that were not even in page one. So, which in my opinion is crazy, because if you ask the SEO, we've always been told to check our rankings, but now rankings don't necessarily mean that we're getting the clicks. That's where I thought we're getting everything wrong. In order to check that I was not freaking out, I even did the maths behind it. So I got a financial guy who does all the data for our agency to look at the proper numbers mathematically to prove that the correlation didn't exist. And even with formula, the correlation didn't exist, which made me a bit concerned.
So is the primary reason that you're getting high rankings, maybe in the top 3 or so above the fold, but no click-through rate? Is the primary reason that you're hitting the wrong intent, so people aren't looking for that particular page at that point in their user journey?
There are a few different reasons. So in the ones that we did get the intent of the page, the SERPs were really crowded. So we had paid on the top, paid on the sides. We had all the snippets. We have snippets underneath. So the SERP was so confusing that people were even jumping, if you were ranking number one, were jumping the content to see whatever was more interesting, whatever had also, for example, videos or images underneath. So that is another thing. You might be ranking number one, but if it's not the SERP is not attractive enough in your results, they might not click on you, because we know that in e-commerce particularly, you can get all your products showing below. So does the user even need to click into your page to see what they're gonna find? Or if you get them to click, you need to make sure that it looks perfectly with all the different snippets. So I think the issue is they are not just one SERP. So we have always monitor everything with this keyword equals this SERP. There is no longer this keyword equals this SERP, because this keyword can be 10 different SERPs, which is making it very difficult to actually track data and make decisions. And the second one is that even if you have the intent, you can no longer guarantee that the user is going to click on you, because they can find the answers to whatever they're looking for within the SERP without the need of clicking. And that, in my opinion, is going to get even worse when SG is there and they can find all the information in front of them without the need of actually reading. So not to say SG is going to break SEO, because the users still need to go to the websites to buy and to engage with the content. But definitely we cannot assume ranking X is going to bring us X traffic, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you've shared what SEO should be doing in 2024. Now let's talk about what SEO shouldn't be doing. So what's something that's seductive in terms of time, but ultimately counterproductive? What's something that SEO shouldn't be doing in 2024?
I think SEOs spend a lot of time trying to figure out what keywords to go after, which keywords are going to be the most productive. But actually, we should be focusing more on what are the topics that are going to bring our users to the site. So going just beyond the keywords. Yes, we do use keywords as a way of understanding the users, but shouldn't be our main metric. I think we always need to put the user above everything. And then from there, moving into topics and then moving into technical stuff, moving to schema, moving into internal linking, but always keeping the user as the main objective and not the keywords.
Topics over keywords in 2024. Carmen Dominguez is head of organic at Hallam, and you can find her over at hallaminternet.com. Carmen, thanks so much for adding your additional insight to SEO in 2024.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain. You've been listening to an episode of SEO in 2024 Additional Insights, a Majestic series that complements the original SEO in 2024 podcast, video series, and book. Find out more at seoin2024.com.